Welcome to this episode of FARS. I'm here once again with two of my favorite NASA procurement attorneys, Robert Tepfer and Michael Mark. And today we're going to give you some real practical information on what you need to know when you suddenly have a bid protest. These usually take you by surprise, and there's a flurry of activity in the first 30 days. And that's what we want to talk to you about today. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning.
I'm doing fine, thank you.
All right, so all of a sudden, bam, we're hit with a bid protest. What should we expect next?
A lot of sleepless nights, I think. You've got 30 days to get the agency report to the GAO. The GAO has a set of rules. They're in the Code of Federal Regulations, and the timelines are laid out. So the first thing is that typically the notice will go to the contracting officer and to the OGC point of contact. The OGC point of contact should let us know the same day as well that's come in. But don't think this is just, okay, the lawyer and maybe the contracting officer. It's a team exercise because you're going to have to split the work up. You've got to create an agency report, which is essentially the whole record of the contract action, starting with the market research all the way through the source selection decision. And there may be other documents. The contracting officer has to write a contracting officer statement of facts, and then has to deal with the allegations that are in the protest. And the lawyers have to write a legal memo. And you got to kind of do that all in parallel.
This sounds like a real team effort.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, is this something that, hey, there's a bid protest filed, great, throw it over the fence to legal?
No, it can't be done that way. And what I have experienced is in our office, typically there's a lead attorney, and that would be the one that was the primary supporting the board. And then if need be, there'll be a second attorney to help doing research, or if we happen to have a summer clerk in, those are good research projects, although you got to be careful. You've got to look at all the cases they cite, and then you've got to do your own research, come up with the cases you've got. At the same time, I've got to help the contracting officer in writing the CO statement of fact. Some COs are very articulate, good writers, others are not. And sometimes you got to take things and say, well, what about if we said it this way? Or tell me what you're trying to say, and then put it in words and say, could you say it that way? At the same time, typically what we try to do is have members of the source board providing other assistance. First of all, they've got to look at that protest and say, well, this is what happened. And we say, okay, show me the documentation. Remember, everything's going to be in the file. You've got to get it loaded in. We use Adobe now because it automatically will bait stamp everything, so you have a number for every single page. And we've had records that have been 8, 10, 12,000 pages long. Now, that's not a lot compared to, say, a BCA, but that's still a lot of paper. Okay. So you want to have the board putting things together. You need somebody to put together the draft of the index. And you also need to get a protective order in place so you know who you can deal with freely on the other side. So there is a lot of work going on at the same time. And, I think that's one of the things that you've got to remember is you're not solo, and you've got to make sure that the other folks are doing their thing as well and coordinate it all.
Yes, the coordination aspect. And Bob, do you also find this at JSC? It sounds like Langley very much has a team effort, and that is pulling stuff together to draft the documents. What about when you've got the briefs and they're ready to they're in close to final form? Who's taking a look at them to make sure that the facts, law, and everything are right?
Is you got to be careful. It's a very delicate balance. As Michael was saying, you have to be going over the contracting officer's statement and everything to make certain that it's well written. From time to time, and in an effort to make them totally in sync with the legal memorandum, we assist. And what you got to be careful of is that contracting officer's statement might end up being in a mini trial. And the CO may be unfamiliar with some of the things that you thought would be supportive of the legal memorandum or the language, and you don't want, you want them to effectively make it their own statement. That's very critical, because nothing will look more disingenuous than the CO not understanding what the CO statement was. that can be a very bad thing. That's worse than lack of contemporaneous document. It makes it look like it's purely a legal exercise. And factually, particularly at a hearing and with the SSA and everything, everybody has to be in sync and everybody has to understand it the same way.
And
So
that's one
the
of the
CO
things.
needs to kind of own the contracting officer's statement of
Absolutely.
facts. What about the source board members, Michael? Are they also needing to be in step or in agreement with what's being written and given to the GAO?
Yes, and what we typically do is once we have what we think is a good working draft, we all gather in a room, we project the thing on the screen, and it's the CO statement of fact, and we go through it line by line and make sure that everybody agrees with what's in there. And I agree with Bob, you may be providing some wording for the CO, but it's the CO statement, not yours. And you need to make sure the CO agrees with it. If the CO doesn't, you've got to back off and say, okay, do it your way, and let's just make sure that we get it right. That way, the documents should line up. The CO and the board members who have been supporting us know what's in it. Now, the legal memo that we write, we're constantly trading that back and forth with the headquarters as well. And the CO statement is also given to the headquarters to make sure that they understand it and they don't have issues with it. So there's a lot of back and forth going. There's a lot of telephone conferences, a lot of sitting in rooms. And so you've just got to make the time and carve it out. One of the things that I think the attorneys need to understand is that when a protest comes in, just about everything else is falling by the wayside. Other people in the office are going to have to pick that up. The CO has to spend their full time on that. The board members have to spend a lot of time, and sometimes it's a challenge to get them to buckle down and do that. So if need be, get your management involved. Make sure that you've got the support, because this thing is all going to be over in 30 days or less. And then there will be probably a supplemental protest and you get to do it all over again, but this time in about 2 weeks.
Well, maybe we can pick that up again in our next episode and talk about what sort of things and issues arise as the GAO bid protest unfolds. But this has been a great, hey, news you can use. You've just had a bid protest filed. What should you expect the next 30 days? And I think Michael encapsulated it perfectly. It's going to be a lot of sleepless nights, but don't worry. This is a freight train going somewhere, and in 30 days, you'll have met the mark and you'll be ready for the next thing. Why don't you join us again between two FARs, and we'll continue to talk. Till next time. Bye-bye.